Is there God? Yes. How's that for a direct answer? Perhaps the real question isn't not so much whether there's a God, but how do we know? And there are several ways to approach the question. One's from our own experience. I know that there's a God because I've seen Him at work in my life. It might be in the form of answered prayer, a healing of a physical problem, a peace of mind when everything else is going wrong. That kind of thing may work for me. It helps me believe. But it may not be enough for someone else who doesn't have those same experiences. If they know you well and they trust you, then maybe they'll trust your experiences too. If it's good evidence for you, it may not necessarily be good evidence for them. If they know you well, even if they know you well, sometimes they aren't willing to make major changes in their life just because you've had a few experiences. You aren't perfect, they might think, and well, maybe you're wrong on that one. Another common approach to the topic is to say that I know God exists because I see His creation all around me. And none of the other explanations for creation is very convincing. Universes just don't pop into existence very often. At least there's no evidence, scientific evidence that they do. And if you know some laws of physics, you might observe that many of the properties of matter are just like they're fine-tuned for human life. The probabilities of that happening by accident are, maybe 10 to the minus 45, which is incredibly small. It's pretty good evidence that something else is going on behind the scenes that is bigger than science is able to investigate. Or you might look at life, and that's too complicated for just it to pop into existence. Maybe something else is involved. Well, I don't mean to tell you that all these arguments don't convince everybody. They might say that yes, the universe is pretty complicated. We can't explain how it all came to be, but we can't explain how God came to be either. So we'll just call it even and say we don't know. Some people are more aggressive than that. They say, we know for sure there is no God. We have been to every corner of the universe, checked it out, haven't found Him anywhere, so we know He doesn't exist. And since their argument isn't really very conclusive, they try to beef it up with a little name-calling. They say, you're not very intelligent if you believe in God. Well, perhaps, we don't know enough about science to understand the arguments back and forth on physics, biology. Maybe we don't have the training in logic to know when people are shouting louder because their evidence is weak. So I'd like to talk about something that we all know, and that's relationships. Everybody's got some relationships. It's part of who we are and what makes us human. We have family relationships, we have friendships, and none of them are perfect. But some of life's greatest joys come in our relationships. Relationships are a source of great happiness, and bad relationships are a source of some of the deepest hurts. Relationships are really important to us. One of the worst things that can happen to a relationship is called betrayal. It's when you thought they were a friend and they turned you around and stabbed you in the back. You thought you'd be best friends forever. Everything was going fine one day until they spit in your face and told horrible lies about you on Facebook. It just kind of hits you in the gut. Makes you sick. And unfortunately, most people have experienced something like that. My question is, was it wrong for them to do that? Was it wrong for them to make promises they didn't keep? Was it wrong for them to tell lies about you just to hurt you? Was it wrong for them to stab you in the back? What if they used a real knife, actually stabbed you in the back? Would that be wrong? Well, yeah, I think so. I think everybody here would think so. But it's not just a matter of what we think. I think it is objectively wrong. Something that every sane person would say is wrong. It's not just a matter of opinion. Our relationships and our feelings tell us that there is such a thing as right and wrong. And right and wrong aren't defined just by our personal preferences. Backstabbing is really objectively wrong. It's not just a matter of personal opinion or social convention. It's wrong in every culture. Can right and wrong be defined by our culture, by a personal opinion, or by something that's bigger than all of us? One way to help answer that question is to observe that culture itself can sometimes be wrong. A couple of centuries ago, British culture said it was okay to buy and sell slaves. But a few people were bold enough to say that was wrong. Was it wrong for them to criticize their own culture? No. Because they said that morality, ethics, is based on something higher than human culture, higher than social customs. There's something actually objectively wrong with buying and selling human beings and using violence to keep them in slavery. Now, we could also approach the question, the topic, from the other side. If human life is just a cosmic accident, and if life on Earth is destined to stop when the sun runs out of energy and the universe runs down becomes a cold and random mess, then if that's what's going to happen, then it really doesn't matter what we do. There's really no basis for saying that anything is wrong. None of it really matters. If there's no meaning and no purpose, then it doesn't really matter. And there are some people today who say that life is ultimately meaningless, that right and wrong are just personal opinions. There's no such thing as telling truth. And yet, they want us to believe those things that they say. They get angry when people stab them in the back, and they will go to court to try to protect their rights. They say that truth and honesty aren't important, but yet they want people to speak truthfully to them and trustworthy when it comes to them. They're not willing to live in a way that's consistent with what they're saying. They're not willing to live in a totally meaningless way. That's because what they teach is self-contradictory. If everything is meaningless, then what about the sentence that everything is meaningless? Is that sentence meaningless too? When they say those words, they presume they have a meaning. Words are not just meaningless sounds. There's a meaning there. So there is something, such a thing as truth. There's something as such a thing as honesty. There is such a thing as love. There's no scientific proof or evidence, but we know it is there. And it's not because of an accident. It's because there's a God. God is not just a creative force or a mysterious power out there creating the universe. God is a personal God. A God who has relationships. And a God who wants to have relationships with us. The Bible says that God created human beings in the image of God. And one of the ways that we are a little bit like God is that we have relationships. We have relationships in which kindness is better than cruelty. When faithfulness is better than betrayal. Honesty is better than backstabbing. And we didn't just think up these ideas for ourselves. They are part of a universe that has been created by a personal God, a good God. A universe in which some things are actually wrong and some things are actually right. Other things are good and godly. But good ideas don't just pop into existence by themselves. An idea, a concept, comes from a mind. And it's not our own mind. In this case, it's a mind that's bigger than all of us put together. And that's the mind of God. It's the concept of right and wrong, good and evil, comes from God. It's not the only thing God does, but it is one of the things that He is. One of the things in everyday life that gives us practical evidence that there is a God. Our concept of right and wrong, our feelings, tell us that there is right and wrong. It's bigger than we are, comes from God. So understanding that God exists helps us understand our relationships. And it tells us why there's a need for honesty and faithfulness and love. The existence of God helps us understand more about ourselves, about who we are in the universe, who we are in relation with each other, how to live in a better and more meaningful way. It helps us make sense out of life. And it's one of the reasons it makes sense for us to believe in God.